Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far and wide our viewers are tuning in. Now imagine this Ainz Ooal Gown, the calculating, suddenly enters the Tensura universe. What happens next? Let's find out. The sky above the Jura Forest does not crack with lightning. It does not swirl into a portal. It simply folds. Space compresses inward as if reality itself inhales too sharply. And in that silent distortion, something impossibly massive settles into existence. Where there was untouched wilderness moments ago, there now stands the Great Tomb of Nazarick, its obsidian spires piercing the canopy, its aura bleeding into the soil like a spreading infection. The air grows heavy, magicules tremble. Creatures that have survived in the monster-infested wilds for centuries suddenly feel something older than fear. Inside the throne room, seated upon cold stone beneath towering pillars, Ainz Ooal Gown surveys his surroundings through layers of detection magic. The rules are different. The system notifications he once relied upon are absent. There is no Yggdrasil interface to explain what just happened, yet power hums in the atmosphere, dense and raw. This world is not a game, it is alive, and that makes it dangerous. Albedo kneels at the foot of the throne, her golden eyes burning with devotion and hostility toward the unknown. Demiurge adjusts his glasses, already calculating variables no one else can perceive. Shalltear smiles faintly, sensing blood in a land that does not yet know it is prey. None of them panic. Panic is for lesser beings. Instead, they wait for their supreme ruler to speak. Ainz does not rush. He never rushes. He expands his awareness beyond Nazarick's walls, scanning the surrounding forest. The magic density here rivals the upper floors of his domain. Powerful life forms roam nearby, creatures that radiate energy equal to high-tier bosses from his old world. Some feel even more refined, their signatures complex, layered, evolved. That realization excites him more than he allows himself to show. A low-level monster pack wandering too close to Nazarick's perimeter disintegrates without warning, erased by the passive death aura radiating from the tomb. The grass blackens, the soil withers, the ecosystem recoils. This world operates on magicules, and Nazarick is flooding the region with a foreign current. It is not just an invasion of space, it is an invasion of law. Miles away, deep within the growing capital of the Jura Tempest Federation, a certain demon lord pauses mid-conversation. Rimuru Tempest feels it like a distant tremor brushing against his senses. Raphael begins processing instantly, identifying an abnormal surge unlike any dragon, demon, or spirit recorded so far. This is structured, layered, intentional, not wild power, controlled power. Rimuru does not yet know the name Nazarick, but he understands one thing immediately. Something has entered his forest without permission. Back in the throne room, Ainz rises slowly from his seat. The sound of bone against stone echoes softly. This is not a random teleportation event. This is opportunity. A new world means new resources, new magic systems, new experiments. More importantly, it means potential threats to Nazarick's supremacy. And threats must be understood before they are eliminated. He issues his first command with calm authority. Reconnaissance. No conquest yet. Demiurge will analyze the political landscape. Shalltear will test the strength of nearby powers discreetly. Pandora's actor will prepare contingency identities. Nazarick will not announce itself with reckless destruction. It will study, infiltrate, and then decide whether this world deserves mercy. But even as plans begin forming, the ground outside trembles again. Not from Nazarick's arrival this time, but from something responding. The magicules in the forest are shifting unnaturally, as if pushed back by an invisible tide. Ainz turns his gaze toward the horizon. Someone powerful has noticed. And in this world, power does not stay hidden for long. The tremor spreads through the Jura Forest like a pulse traveling through veins. Ancient traits that have stood unmoving for centuries shudder as their roots sense the corruption creeping through the soil. High-level monsters retreat instinctively, not because they understand what Nazarick is, but because instinct tells them a new apex predator has claimed territory. The balance that Rimuru carefully cultivated in this land is beginning to tilt, and it is tilting fast. Within Nazarick's 6th floor, Ora Bella Fiora stands atop a massive tree branch, her sharp elven eyes scanning through magical familiars dispatched in every direction. Beside her, Mayor Bello Fiore presses his staff gently against the ground, reading the vibration of earth itself. They do not see cities yet. They do not see armies. What they see are concentrations of magicules so dense they resemble storm systems moving across the map. This is not an underdeveloped world. It is a world brimming with entities capable of rivaling the Guardians themselves. Demiurge processes this information with unsettling composure. If such beings exist naturally, then political structures must exist around them. Power in this world is likely consolidated under individuals rather than systems. That means alliances, rivalries, hierarchies. Ainz listens as the reports filter in, his mind racing behind an expressionless skull. A realm of demon lords, dragons classified as catastrophes, primordial demons roaming freely. Each revelation sharpens his focus rather than shaking it. He considers one possibility carefully. If this world allows evolution beyond preset limits, then Nazarick's forces could grow in ways Yggdrasil never permitted. The thought is intoxicating. However, intoxication leads to miscalculation, and Ainz refuses to repeat past mistakes. He remembers too clearly how easily overconfidence can fracture control. Outside Nazarick's perimeter, Shalltear observes a distant group of ogres migrating cautiously through the forest. They are not mindless beasts. Their movements are disciplined, armed, organized. One of them radiates enough energy to classify as a mid to high-tier combatant in Yggdrasil terms. Shalltear suppresses her killing intent for now, though it irritates her to do so. She reports instead of acting, and that restraint alone signals how seriously Nazarick is taking this unknown world. Back in Tempest, Rimuru convenes an emergency meeting. Benimaru senses something wrong in the air. Shuna feels the disturbance disrupting spiritual flow. Diablo's smile widens in quiet anticipation. He has encountered presences like this before. Long ago, beings who do not merely possess strength, but embody calculation. Raphael presents Rimuru with a growing list of anomalies: negative energy concentration, instantaneous disappearance of minor monster groups, terrain alteration with no known skill signature. The pattern is unmistakable. An intelligent force has arrived. Rimuru's first instinct is not aggression. It is a caution. He has built Tempest on cooperation and diplomacy, but he is not naive. If a new power has established itself in the forest without so much as a greeting, then it is either unaware of Tempest's authority or deliberately testing boundaries. Neither option is comforting. He dispatches Sue with a covert surveillance squad. Observe only. Do not engage. Meanwhile, inside Nazarick's war room, a three-dimensional projection of the surrounding region takes shape through layered detection spells. Demiurge highlights one territory repeatedly, a rapidly developing nation at the heart of the forest, infrastructure expanding at unnatural speed. Population density is increasing, high-tier energy signatures concentrated around a central capital. This is not a coincidence. This is a power base. Ainz studies the projection in silence. If this nation commands the forest, then it is the first variable to evaluate. But evaluation requires data, and data requires controlled experimentation. He issues a secondary order, subtle and precise. Select a minor settlement near Nazarick's outer range. Erase it cleanly. Measure magical backlash. Analyze resurrection mechanics. Confirm whether this world permits true death or cyclical rebirth. It is a cold command delivered without hesitation. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. Nazarick survives through information, and information must sometimes be extracted through destruction. As the chosen settlement continues its unaware routine under the moonlit canopy, none of its inhabitants realize that far beneath the earth, a tomb not born of this world has already marked them as the first data point in a much larger experiment. The village never sees it coming. There is no marching army, no visible spell formation, no roar to signal catastrophe. A silent pulse radiates outward from a concealed magical array activated deep within Nazarick's lower floors. It travels beneath the soil, threads through roots and stone, and then rises in a perfect sphere around the settlement. For half a second the night holds its breath. Then everything inside the boundary simply stops. Hearts cease. Magic circuits collapse. Souls are severed with surgical precision. The buildings remain standing. The torches continue burning. But life is gone. Back in the war room, layers of detection magic flare as data floods in. Ainz watches carefully. No automatic resurrection triggers. No divine intervention. No world correction. The souls disperse into ambient magicules before fading completely. This world allows absolute death. The implication is enormous. Power here is not protected by system safeguards. It is raw and therefore exploitable. Demiurge smiles faintly at the results. This confirms two things. First, Nazarick's magic functions without resistance from the local laws. Second, the surrounding ecosystem reacts violently to sudden soul depletion. The magicule density spikes and then destabilizes, creating a ripple effect detectable across a vast radius. That ripple is intentional. A signal disguised as collateral damage. Miles away, Sue halts mid-stride as the wave passes through him. His shadow clones flicker with disturbance. He changes direction immediately, racing toward the origin point. At the same moment, Raphael completes its analysis within Rimuru's consciousness. An entire population erased in an instant. No known ultimate skill signature, no dragon-class aura. Something fundamentally different has acted. Rimuru's expression hardens. This is no territorial skirmish. This is annihilation. His voice loses its casual tone as he issues orders. Increase surveillance. Prepare evacuation protocols for nearby settlements. Diablo is instructed to accompany Sue, not to engage recklessly, but to assess the entity responsible. The air in Tempest shifts from curiosity to readiness. Inside Nazarick, Ainz absorbs every detail of the magical backlash spreading across the forest. The response time is impressive. Surveillance units are already approaching the perimeter. He senses multiple high-tier entities converging cautiously, their signatures disciplined and controlled. This is not a chaotic monster territory. It is organized under leadership that values intelligence gathering over emotional retaliation. That realization narrows his eyes. A competent ruler governs this land, and competent rulers cannot be ignored. Shalltear volunteers to intercept the approaching observers, her crimson eyes gleaming with anticipation. Ainz denies the request. Premature confrontation risks revealing Nazarick's upper limits before they are understood. Instead, he orders subtle interference. Illusion barriers distort the landscape. Spatial folds redirect scouts in harmless loops. Nazarick will not be seen clearly unless it chooses to be seen. As Sue and his team near the corrupted zone, the forest itself begins behaving unnaturally. Paths twist back onto themselves. Shadows stretch at impossible angles. Even Sue's mastery of stealth struggles against the spatial manipulation at play. Diablo, however, merely laughs softly. He recognizes layered dimensional control when he feels it. Whoever resides ahead commands not just power, but refined magical theory. Within the throne room, Ainz contemplates the next variable. The presence approaching his territory carries an energy signature unlike any he has encountered since leaving Yggdrasil. It is demonic, yet not bound by infernal hierarchy, ancient yet evolving. If this is a subordinate, then the ruler must be exponentially more dangerous. He speaks calmly to his guardians. This world contains beings capable of challenging Nazarick. Underestimation will not be tolerated. Every action from this point forward must account for adaptive evolution. He will not treat this as a simple conquest scenario. He will treat it as a long-term campaign of dominance through information control. Outside, the corrupted clearing where the village once thrived stands as silent evidence of Nazarick's arrival. The soil has begun to recover, but the absence of souls leaves an unnatural emptiness in the air. When Sui finally observes the boundary of that perfect sphere, he understands something chilling. This was not collateral damage from a clash. It was an experiment. And experiments imply intent. Back within Tempest, Rimuru closes his eyes and extends his perception further than before, brushing against the edge of the anomaly. For the briefest instant, something brushes back. Not hostile, not friendly, simply aware. Two supreme rulers have now confirmed each other's existence. The forest is no longer just territory. It has become a chessboard. And the first move has already been made. That fleeting moment of contact is enough. Rimuru pulls his consciousness back before the probing presence can analyze him further. But Raphael has already begun dissecting what little information was exchanged. The energy structure is layered in unfamiliar architecture, spell matrices stacked with deliberate symmetry rather than the fluid evolution common in this world. This power was designed, engineered, not grown through natural magicule accumulation. Rimuru understands immediately that this is not a newly awakened monster or a wandering demon lord seeking territory. This is an organized force with hierarchy, discipline, and terrifying precision. In Nazarick's throne room, Ainz lowers his detection spell slowly. The contact was brief, yet it confirms a hypothesis. The ruler of this forest possesses analysis capabilities rivaling his own. That touch against his magical perimeter was controlled, measured, and instantly withdrawn. No reckless aggression, no blind panic, just an evaluation. Ainz feels a rare sensation beneath his undead calm. Excitement. Albedo steps forward, her voice tight with restrained fury at the idea that an unknown entity dared to peer toward Nazarick. She requests permission to mobilize the Guardians and eliminate the threat before it escalates. Demiurge, however, advises patience. A power capable of such refined detection must hold influence over surrounding territories. Destroying it without understanding its network could unite this world against Nazarick prematurely. Ainz agrees. Conquest without context leads to unnecessary resistance. Instead, he shifts strategy. If the opposing ruler values order and protection, then targeted destabilization will force a reveal. Pressure applied at calculated points will compel this demon lord to respond personally. And when that happens, Nazarick will measure him directly. In the forest's outer regions, lesser monsters begin migrating in panic from the corrupted zone, colliding with Tempest patrol routes. Reports flood into the capital. Trade paths are disrupted. Small villages request reinforcement. What was once a stable ecosystem begins fracturing under the psychological weight of an unseen predator. Even without open war, Nazarick's mere presence is altering geopolitical equilibrium. Rimuru convenes his closest advisors again, this time with sharper focus. He does not announce fear, but he does not mask the seriousness either. Annihilating an entire settlement as a test crosses a line. Whoever stands behind it views life as a variable. That mindset cannot be ignored. He authorizes increased defensive barriers around Tempest and quietly activates contingency protocols reserved for Demon Lord level threats. Diablo returns with partial reconnaissance, his grin wider than before. He confirms spatial distortion far beyond standard barrier techniques. He also confirms something more important. The entity at the center of that distortion radiates absolute authority over its domain. Not wild dominance like a dragon's aura. Structured sovereignty, a kingdom sealed within layers of calculated defense. Diablo's voice carries genuine intrigue when he suggests that this may be a ruler worthy of direct conversation. Back in Nazarick, Pandora's actor finalizes multiple infiltration identities suited to this world's political climate. If diplomacy becomes advantageous, Nazarick will present a controlled face. If manipulation proves more effective, it will weave influence from the shadows. Every path remains open because Ainz refuses to commit prematurely. Yet beneath all the strategy, one undeniable truth settles over both factions. The Jura Forest now hosts two apex authorities, one built through evolution, alliances, and shared growth. The other was constructed through design, loyalty, and absolute command. Neither bends easily. Neither retreats without purpose. As night deepens, the Great Tomb of Nazarick stands silent, its towers cutting into a sky that does not recognize it. Magicules continue to shift uneasily around its borders, adapting to a foreign presence that refuses to fade. Within Tempest, Rimuru gazes toward the dark horizon where the anomaly resides. He does not know the name Ainz Ooal Gown yet, but he knows a mind like his own is watching from the other side. The forest waits between them, heavy with tension, aware that the next move will not be a simple test. It will be a declaration, and when that declaration comes, it will decide whether this world gains an uneasy alliance between monsters or witnesses the beginning of a war that reshapes the very laws of magic. By the time dawn stretches across the Jura Forest, both rulers have already shifted from reaction to calculation. This is no longer about who arrived or who noticed first. It is about who understands faster. Inside Tempest, Rimuru sits alone for a moment, allowing Raphael to replay every fragment of data collected so far. The spatial distortion surrounding Nazarick is not a simple barrier. It is layered dimensional reinforcement, anchored from within rather than projected outward. That means the structure itself is the source, a self-sustaining fortress. Raphael proposes multiple probing strategies, each designed to extract information without triggering full-scale retaliation. Rimuru listens, then rejects the more aggressive options. If the entity behind this tomb thrives on control, then reckless pressure will only accelerate conflict. Instead, he chooses visibility, a message rather than a threat. A demon lord who rules through unity does not hide behind assassins. Rimuru announces to his inner circle that he will approach the anomaly personally once enough preliminary data is gathered. The room goes silent. Benimaru objects first, not out of doubt in Rimuru's strength, but because the unknown variables are too many. Diablo, however, looks almost pleased. He understands what Rimuru is doing. When two apex predators meet face to face, intelligence becomes clearer than any spy report. Meanwhile, in Nazarick, Demiurge presents a refined assessment to Ainz. The forest's governing power has not retaliated impulsively. Defensive measures have increased, yet no direct assault has been launched. This suggests confidence. It also suggests strategic patience. Demiurge theorizes that the ruler of Tempest is running high-level analysis, possibly even possessing a unique skill centered around computation or foresight. Ainz considers that carefully. In Yggdrasil, knowledge was limited by system constraints. Here, growth appears fluid. If this demon lord can evolve mid-conflict, then traditional scaling assumptions collapse. That possibility demands extreme caution. Ainz activates additional layers of concealment, masking Nazarick's deeper floors from external observation while allowing only controlled readings to leak outward. He wants to see how the opposing analyst interprets incomplete data. Far from both capitals, Sue and Nazarick's hidden familiars cross paths without realizing it. Information flows in opposite directions through shadows and summoned constructs. Tempest confirms the presence of multiple high-tier guardians within the tomb's perimeter. Nazarick confirms that Tempest fields combatants whose auras rival floor guardians in intensity. The gap between them is not as wide as either side initially assumed. Then Raphael delivers a breakthrough. The annihilation spell used on the village carries traces of a principle that does not align with standard magicule manipulation. It resembles a fixed effect ability, closer to absolute rule enforcement than elemental casting. Rimuru leans forward as the conclusion forms. The tomb's ruler might be operating on a system that predates this world's evolutionary mechanics. At the same time, Demiurge uncovers something equally unsettling. Surveillance indicates that Rimuru Tempest's power signature fluctuates dynamically depending on context, as though multiple authorities reside within him. That is not normal, even for a demon lord. Ainz listens in silence as the report ends with a single statement. The slime is not a static entity. He adapts in real time. Both sides reach the same realization independently. Raw strength will not determine the outcome of this encounter. Superior understanding will. Rimuru finally stands, decision made. He will not send an envoy. He will go himself, not to fight, but to measure. If this ruler values calculation, then let him calculate directly. As he steps outside Tempest's gates, the magicules around him stabilize into a controlled storm, invisible to ordinary observers, yet unmistakable to any high-tier entity watching from afar. Deep within Nazarick, Ainz senses that movement instantly. The forest's dominant presence is approaching, not with an army but alone. Ainz's hollow eyes narrow slightly. That choice speaks volumes: confidence, curiosity, or a test. He rises from his throne once more and orders the throne room prepared for a guest whose power may rival his own. Rimuru does not rush through the forest. He walks, each step deliberate, unhurried, as if he were visiting a neighboring nation rather than approaching an unknown superstructure that erased a settlement overnight. The trees bend slightly as he passes, reacting to the density of magicules compressed so tightly around him that the air itself feels structured. Raphael runs continuous simulations in the background, mapping every distortion ahead, predicting countermeasures, calculating escape vectors that Rimuru hopes he will not need. Diablo follows at a distance, not out of distrust, but discipline. If this turns hostile, he will intervene. If it remains civil, he will observe. That is the balance Rimuru wants: strength without paranoia, confidence without arrogance. As Nazarick's outer distortion field comes into view, the forest shifts unnaturally. Space folds in subtle angles, creating an illusion of depth that does not exist. To a normal observer, it would appear as an impassable maze. To Rimuru, it is a statement. This fortress does not rely on intimidation alone. It relies on layered intelligence. Every inch of this perimeter was designed to gather data on intruders before they even realize they are being studied. Raphael confirms active observation from multiple vectors. Rimuru smiles faintly. Good, let them watch. He makes no attempt to conceal his aura. Instead, he refines it, allowing just enough pressure to signal Demon Lord status without escalating into aggression. It is a controlled display, the magical equivalent of knocking on a door with authority. Inside the throne room, Ainz feels the precise modulation of that aura. Not flaring wildly, not probing recklessly. It is calibrated. The realization tightens his focus. This is not a brute relying solely on overwhelming force. This is a ruler who understands perception. Demiurge advises allowing Rimuru to enter the first spatial layer unchallenged. Denying access could be interpreted as fear. Granting limited passage demonstrates confidence while maintaining control. Ainz agrees. The outer distortion subtly rearranges itself, opening a direct path toward Nazarick's monumental gates. It is an invitation without submission. Rimuru notices the shift instantly. Raphael confirms that the pathway is stable and free of lethal triggers, though multiple contingency spells remain primed beneath the surface. He steps forward without hesitation. The massive doors of Nazarick rise before him, carved with symbols from a world he has never seen, radiating authority that does not originate from magicules alone, but from legacy. For a brief moment, Rimuru considers the implications. This structure feels ancient, yet its energy is not weathered. It is preserved, maintained with obsessive care. Whoever rules here values order above all else. The gates open slowly, revealing a corridor lined with guardians standing in disciplined silence. Albedo at the forefront, her gaze sharp and unwavering. Behind her, beings whose power rivals calamities. They do not attack, they do not bow, they assess. Rimuru steps inside as the doors close behind him with a resonant echo that seals away the forest's sounds. The atmosphere shifts immediately. Nazarick's internal magic does not flow like the outside world. It is structured in layers, each floor radiating a different frequency. Raphael begins intensive analysis, parsing foreign spell architecture faster than most beings could comprehend language. At the far end of the grand hall, upon a throne elevated above all others, sits Ainz Ooal Gown, motionless, silent, watching. His presence is not explosive like a dragon's, nor oppressive like a raging demon. It is controlled by inevitability, the stillness of something that does not doubt its own supremacy. Rimuru stops at a respectful distance. For a heartbeat, neither speaks. In that silence, two analytical minds dissect each other completely. Magic signatures intertwine cautiously, testing boundaries without crossing them. This is not a meeting of monsters. It is a duel of comprehension. And both understand that the first word spoken here will shape everything that follows. Ainz is the first to speak, his voice echoing through the vast chamber with calm authority. He welcomes Rimuru Tempest to the Great Tomb of Nazarick, as though this were a scheduled diplomatic visit rather than an encounter between two powers capable of erasing nations. His tone is measured, neither warm nor hostile, but layered with intent. Every syllable is chosen to project sovereignty. Rimuru responds in kind, introducing himself not merely as a demon lord, but as the leader of the Jura Tempest Federation. He makes it clear that this forest is under his protection. The statement is polite, the meaning is not. Raphael dissects Ainz's voice patterns, magical fluctuations, micro-delays between words. Conclusion: emotional suppression skill active. Probability is high that the skeletal ruler is maintaining artificial composure. Rimuru finds that interesting. Suppressing emotion suggests either caution or calculation, possibly both. Across the hall, Demiurge observes Rimuru's aura stability. No spike in aggression despite proximity to multiple hostile capable entities. That level of restraint implies overwhelming confidence in defensive measures. Demiurge updates his internal assessment. The slime is not posturing. He is certain of his survivability here. Ainz shifts the discussion toward the incident in the forest without acknowledging responsibility directly. He frames it as a magical anomaly worth investigating cooperatively. It is a test. If Rimuru reacts emotionally, negotiations become leverage. If he reacts analytically, then the threat level increases. Rimuru does not accuse. He does not demand. Instead, he states a simple fact. An entire settlement ceased to exist within a perfect boundary. The energy signature traces back toward Nazarick's coordinates. His golden eyes sharpen slightly as he adds that such actions destabilize the ecosystem he has worked to balance. There is no anger in his tone. That makes it heavier. For a fraction of a second, the air tightens. Shalltear's fingers twitch. Albedo's wings flare subtly. But Ainz raises a hand and the tension stills. He admits that an experiment was conducted to understand the world's mechanics. Honesty is deliberate. A calculated reveal to observe Rimuru's reaction to transparency. Raphael processes the confession instantly. Conclusion: the ruler prioritizes information acquisition above diplomatic optics. High probability of future controlled tests if left unchecked. Rimuru absorbs the admission without visible outrage. Instead, he pivots the conversation. If Nazarick seeks information, Tempest possesses extensive research on magicule theory, evolution pathways, and demon lord hierarchies. Cooperation would yield data without unnecessary casualties. The offer hangs between them like a blade suspended by a thread. Demiurge's mind races. Access to this world's evolutionary system through voluntary exchange would accelerate Nazarick's adaptation exponentially. Yet cooperation risks exposing internal limitations. Ainz leans forward slightly on his throne. His crimson orbs lock onto Rimuru's gaze. He senses no deception, but that does not equate to safety. This slime radiates layered authority, and beneath it lies something else. Multiple presences interwoven. Ainz cannot yet identify them, but he feels their weight. He counters with a proposal of his own, a non-aggression pact while both sides conduct parallel research, borders respected, surveillance minimized. information exchanged selectively. Rimuru considers it carefully. Raphael simulates outcomes across thousands of branches. Immediate war results in catastrophic environmental damage and unpredictable evolution spikes. Temporary alliance allows deeper understanding of Nazarick's structure while preserving Tempest's stability. Rimuru nods once, a provisional agreement. The tension in the hall shifts from imminent clash to fragile equilibrium. Guardians relax marginally, though none lower their guard completely. Two rulers have chosen calculation over conflict for now. But beneath the surface of diplomacy, both minds continue moving. Ainz begins planning scenarios where this alliance becomes leverage. Rimuru quietly expands analysis threads to map Nazarick's internal architecture through every magical fluctuation in the room. This is not peace. It is a contest of patience, and both sides are fully aware that the first miscalculation will not result in a minor skirmish. It will ignite a war between systems that were never meant to coexist. The agreement is sealed not with a handshake, but with mutual acknowledgement. In this room, words are binding because both understand the cost of breaking them. Ainz declares that Nazarick will refrain from further territorial experiments within the Jura Forest without prior notice. Rimuru, in turn, confirms that Tempest will not initiate reconnaissance inside Nazarick's internal floors. Boundaries are drawn, invisible yet absolute. Yet even as the terms settle, analysis does not stop. Raphael continues mapping the magical geometry of the throne room, identifying how energy circulates through pillars, how the floor absorbs ambient magicules and redistributes them deeper underground. Nazarick is not merely defended, it is optimized. Every structure contributes to sustainability. That level of design suggests centuries of refinement or a creator obsessed with perfection. Possibly both. Across the chamber, Demiurge quietly recalculates Rimuru's threat index. The slime has not once attempted to assert dominance through aura pressure. He has not tested Nazarick's defensive triggers. He has not even requested entry beyond this hall. That restraint implies long-term vision. A ruler who thinks beyond immediate advantage is far more dangerous than one who seeks quick victory. Ainz rises from his throne, descending a single step. The movement is subtle but symbolic. He is not lowering himself. He is signaling that this conversation is between equals. The Guardians remain motionless, though the shift in posture does not escape them. Rimuru notices it immediately. He understands symbolism when he sees it. This skeletal monarch commands loyalty not through fear alone, but through structured reverence. The Guardians' eyes never waver. Their faith is absolute. That kind of devotion cannot be fabricated easily. It must be earned or engineered through extraordinary means. Either explanation raises Nazarick's strategic value and its danger. Ainz inquires about the broader geopolitical landscape beyond the forest. Human nations, other demon lords, dragons. He frames it as curiosity, but the subtext is reconnaissance. Rimuru provides measured information, enough to establish context without revealing Tempest's deepest alliances. He mentions the octagram and the balance maintained among demon lords, carefully observing how Ainz reacts to the existence of multiple entities on Rimuru's level. The reaction is minimal. That is more concerning than shock would have been. Both rulers understand the implication. If Nazarick were to expand aggressively, it would not face a single demon lord. It would face a network. Conversely, if Tempest underestimates Nazarick's unknown upper limits, it risks destabilizing that same balance. The margin for error narrows with every exchange sentence. Eventually, the conversation shifts from testing to projection. Rimuru proposes a limited exchange of magical research teams at neutral ground outside Nazarick's core, scholars rather than soldiers, controlled transparency rather than blind trust. Ainz agrees in principle, though he assigns Pandora's actor to oversee any interaction personally. No information leaves Nazarick without filtration. As the meeting concludes, the massive doors open once more. The corridor beyond waits in silence. Rimuru turns to leave, pausing only briefly. He thanks Ainz for the audience, his tone genuine yet unreadable. Ainz inclines his head slightly in response, crimson gaze unwavering. When Rimuru steps back into the forest, the air feels different. Not lighter, sharper. Acknowledgement has replaced uncertainty. There is now a name attached to the anomaly. Ainz Ooal Gown, ruler of Nazarick. A sovereign who values information above impulse. Inside the tomb, Ainz returns to his throne, but he does not sit immediately. He stares toward the closed gates, mind accelerating through countless contingencies. The slime's composure was flawless. His analytical support system rivals Nazarick's greatest strategists. If conflict comes, it will not be decided by brute strength alone. It will hinge on whose analysis evolves faster under pressure. In Tempest, Raphael finalizes a preliminary model of Nazarick's magical infrastructure. Conclusion: unknown variables remain extensive. The probability of concealed trump cards is extremely high. Two powers have measured each other and chosen restraint, for now. But beneath diplomacy lies competition. Intelligence against absolute analysis, adaptation against preparation. The next move will not be made in a throne room. It will be made in the shadows where information is currency, and every calculated step brings them closer to inevitable collision. The air in the Great Tomb of Nazarick feels different after the initial meeting. Ainz Ooal Gown has returned to the throne, but his mind is not resting. He is analyzing every gesture, every word, every fluctuation in Rimuru's aura, and extrapolating probabilities across 100 possible scenarios. Behind him, Demiurge leans lightly on his cane, glasses reflecting the dim light of the chamber, a faint smile curling his lips. He has been silent until now, absorbing the first encounter like a predator studying a rival before the hunt begins. Demiurge does not need permission to think. He has been granted discretion to plan, and he intends to act. He approaches Ainz with a subtle deference, phrasing his first proposal carefully, almost as if he were suggesting it out of curiosity rather than strategy. He proposes destabilization of the Jura Tempest Federation's periphery without engaging Rimuru directly. No open war, no immediate casualties among the Central Command. Instead, targeted manipulation of weaker neighboring nations, the creation of minor skirmishes, and subtle political unrest designed to force Rimuru to spread his attention thin. Ainz listens, expression unchanged, but internally approval grows. Demiurge has grasped a critical point. This is not a conventional foe. Rimuru is adaptive. He evolves in response to threats, recalculates probabilities instantaneously, and commands loyalty through intelligence as much as charisma. A direct confrontation now would be inefficient, potentially dangerous. Demiurge's plan offers both data and leverage, minimizing risk while generating variables that Nazarick can control and measure. Orders are issued quietly. Pandora's actor is dispatched to infiltrate several minor courts under the guise of diplomats, nobles, and merchants. Shalltear and Aura Bellafiora are assigned to observe key regions, not as invaders, but as shadows, removing key leaders and sowing controlled disarray where necessary. Cocytus is tasked with reinforcing strategic points, ready to intervene should any skirmish escalate beyond expectations. The Guardians are poised, ready to act with lethal precision, yet none move without direct instruction. This is a chessboard, and Demiurge has just made the first calculated move. Within days, reports began reaching Nazarick. One kingdom in the southern border experiences inexplicable internal conflict. Key officials vanish without explanation, rumors of assassination and betrayal spreading quickly. Trade routes falter as rival factions attempt to capitalize on the instability. Rimuru, monitoring from Tempest, immediately senses the changes. The disturbance is subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but it carries the fingerprints of an intelligent hand. He recognizes the precision and restraint in the manipulation. Whoever is behind it does not act recklessly. They calculate every response. Rimuru convenes his inner circle. Benimaru and Shion report strange patterns among the peripheral nations. Diablo confirms multiple intelligence threads indicating coordinated activity that exceeds the capacity of any single local ruler. It is not a natural escalation of power. This is deliberate, systematic, calculated. Rimuru's eyes narrow. Whoever is behind this is forcing him to respond on multiple fronts without revealing themselves. He begins adjusting Tempest's defensive grid, reallocating patrols, reinforcing magical barriers, and deploying covert monitoring units while maintaining the appearance of routine operations. Back in Nazarick, Demiurge monitors every development with satisfaction. The world reacts exactly as expected. Rimuru's adaptive strategy is activated, yet he is constrained by his desire to maintain stability. Minor skirmishes erupt at controlled points, testing both Tempest's military response and Rimuru's personal thresholds. Every reaction is catalogued, every adjustment recorded. The information flow alone is worth the operation, providing insight into Rimuru's decision-making hierarchy, priority structures, and the speed at which he can mobilize his forces. Shalltear reports her observations from the field with meticulous detail. She has intercepted a small contingent of elite Tempest warriors attempting to investigate one of the destabilized villages. They were neutralized efficiently, incapacitated without lethal force, allowing Rimuru to observe the situation without permanent loss. This confirms what Demiurge suspected. Rimuru values controlled engagement and avoids unnecessary casualties. It is an advantage and a constraint. Ainz observes all of this silently, weighing Demiurge's execution. The plan is unfolding perfectly. Not only is it gathering intelligence, but it is also subtly shaping the battlefield according to Nazarick's design. Each minor disruption triggers secondary effects. Trade falters, local allegiances shift, and the peripheral demon lords begin adjusting their policies without knowledge of the true manipulator. Rimuru is being drawn out, but he has not yet realized that every step he takes is being calculated, analyzed, and used as input for future actions. In the outer forests of the Jura Federation, Rimuru begins responding personally. He deploys Sui, Shuna, and other trusted agents to investigate anomalies. The further they probe, the more apparent it becomes that these events are linked. Signals, magical traces, and energy signatures align in patterns too precise to be natural. Rimuru's mind races as he analyzes possibilities. Whoever is behind this has a strategic depth rivaling his own, perhaps even exceeding it in terms of patience and anticipation. Demiurge anticipates Rimuru's analysis before it even occurs. He projects possible pathways, calculating every likely route Tempest's forces might take and preparing contingencies. Pandora's actor adjusts identities in real time, subtly influencing diplomats to maintain the illusion of disarray while avoiding outright chaos. Aura and Mare intercept scouts and minor commanders, applying controlled pressure that forces Rimuru to commit resources without overextending. The first weeks of this campaign pass almost invisibly to ordinary observers. Villages are unsettled, merchant caravans rerouted, rumors of shadowy manipulation spread through the land. But Tempest itself is unaffected in terms of core stability. Rimuru remains unharmed, his central command unbroken, yet every reaction, every deployment, every analysis is being measured. By the time Rimuru finally begins connecting the dots, Demiurge has already predicted several of his probable counteractions. Ainz's eyes narrow beneath his skull mask. This is precisely the dynamic he intended. Direct engagement is postponed, but the groundwork is laid. Variables have been activated. The map has been rewritten in subtle ways, and every step Rimuru takes now feeds into Nazarick's understanding of his adaptability. The lesson is clear. Rimuru Tempest is powerful, intelligent, and adaptive, but he is not omniscient. Every decision carries consequences, and Demiurge's first move ensures that Nazarick holds the upper hand in the long game, turning the forest itself into a testing ground, a network of controlled variables designed to study, provoke, and ultimately manipulate the Demon Lord into revealing the full extent of his capabilities. Every kingdom destabilized, every minor skirmish, every careful probe brings Nazarick closer to understanding how this world functions under its new ruler's influence. And as the sun sets over the Jura Forest, both sides know this is only the beginning. Rimuru senses the invisible hand moving behind events, while Ainz and Demiurge watch with cold precision, ready to observe how the first real move in this contest of intelligence and strategy will unfold. The disturbances continue to ripple across the forest with increasing subtlety, each event designed not to provoke open conflict, but to draw Rimuru's attention in specific ways. Villages once considered stable now experience unexpected political friction. Minor demon lords shift allegiances unpredictably, and merchant caravans report strange, unexplained sabotage along trade routes. Rimuru senses the patterns almost immediately. It is not chaotic, it is deliberate. The precision behind the incidents is unmistakable. Someone is orchestrating these events with a level of foresight and patience that mirrors his own, yet their methods are alien. Rimuru convenes his inner circle with urgency. Benimaru, Xion, and Diablo analyze the anomalies from multiple perspectives, cross-referencing magical signatures, political shifts, and troop movements. Raphael overlays historical data with current activity, revealing correlations that are too precise to be coincidental. Rimuru leans back, calculating the implications. Whoever is behind this is not merely testing Tempest's strength. They are testing his judgment, his decision-making, his priorities. The patterns are not intended to harm directly. They are designed to provoke observation and response. Demiurge monitors these developments with quiet satisfaction. Each of Rimuru's deployments is noted, every defensive measure analyzed, and every tactical adjustment predicted with frightening accuracy. He watches as Tempest reallocates forces, reinforces trade routes, and recalibrates internal defenses. In each instance, he records not only the actions but the thought process behind them, building a detailed profile of Rimuru's adaptive strategies. Inside Nazarick, Ainz Ooal Gown observes without interruption. His skeletal gaze does not waver as Demiurge explains the outcomes of each subtle manipulation. "Excellent," Ainz murmurs, though his voice carries no audible emotion. He understands that the first move is not about victory. It is about testing, gathering data, and establishing control over the variables. The more Rimuru responds, the more Nazarick learns. The Guardians continue to play their roles with perfect discipline. Shalltear intercepts minor reconnaissance squads, capturing them without harm and feeding them back into controlled illusions designed to mask Nazarick's presence. Aura and Mare monitor troop movements, using terrain manipulation to redirect forces subtly without direct confrontation. Pandora's actor continues infiltrating diplomatic channels, influencing decisions in ways so discreet that the affected parties remain unaware of external manipulation. Meanwhile, Rimuru begins detecting anomalies in the forest that defy normal magical theory. Patterns of mana density shift unpredictably, yet in a way that maintains balance rather than causing chaos. Barriers that appear impervious to his analysis fluctuate in controlled intervals, subtly testing his perception and adaptation. Each observation deepens Rimuru's understanding of the force he faces, confirming that the entity behind these actions possesses not only power, but meticulous strategic intelligence. Demiurge anticipates Rimuru's realization and adjusts the next phase of the operation accordingly. He introduces variables that force Tempest to consider secondary consequences, including civilian safety, trade stability, and the loyalty of peripheral demon lords. Every move Rimuru makes feeds back into Demiurge's calculations, refining the predictive model and increasing Nazarick's understanding of Tempest's limits. Ainz reflects silently on the progress. The forest has become a living laboratory. Rimuru is responding as expected, measured, adaptive, and cautious, but he cannot see the full picture. Every action is observed, analyzed, and recorded. In essence, Tempest is playing a game without knowing all the rules, while Nazarick controls the board. As the sun dips below the horizon, Rimuru prepares for a more direct response. He knows subtle destabilization is the work of an intelligent hand, but he cannot yet locate its source. His adaptive strategies are active, and his forces are positioned to respond to multiple contingencies. Yet every decision he makes is anticipated and countered in advance by Demiurge's invisible hand. The night deepens, and the forest grows quiet, though not peaceful. Invisible currents of power flow beneath the trees, threading through villages and mountains alike, guiding events toward outcomes carefully orchestrated by Nazarick. Rimuru senses the tension in every magical fluctuation and begins to realize the depth of the intelligence arrayed against him. He understands now that this is more than a test of force. It is a test of perception, prediction, and the ability to adapt under unseen pressure. And as both sides observe each other from opposite corners of the forest, the first real chess pieces are in motion. Every minor skirmish, every hidden manipulation, every subtle adjustment is a demonstration of strategy, patience, and precision. Rimuru Tempest is calculating, but so is Demiurge, and both understand that the eventual confrontation will not be decided by brute strength alone, but by who can outthink, outmaneuver, and adapt faster in a world where every action is scrutinized, measured, and anticipated. By the time the first full moon rises over the Jura Forest, Demiurge has elevated the operation to its next level. He does not act recklessly. Subtlety is his weapon. A series of small, seemingly disconnected events ripple across peripheral territories. Trade embargoes enforced through bribed officials, minor demon clans shifting alliances after targeted manipulations, and unusual fluctuations in magical energy observed near strategic nodes. Each event alone would appear insignificant, but when viewed collectively, they form a pattern designed to pull Rimuru's attention outward, forcing him to deploy forces incrementally, revealing the depth of his strategic thinking. Rimuru observes the disturbances in real time, feeling the precise weight of calculated interference. He does not panic, nor does he underestimate the hand guiding these events. He deploys scouts, agents, and magical probes, but every probe is subtly misdirected, every agent's path monitored and counterbalanced. Raphael overlays layers of predictive simulations, estimating the presence of an intelligence behind the anomalies. Slowly, the truth becomes unavoidable. This is not natural chaos. It is orchestration. Someone is deliberately testing him, forcing him to reveal both capacity and priority. Inside Nazarick, Demiurge records every nuance of Rimuru's reactions, the speed at which the Demon Lord reallocates resources, the weight he gives to civilian safety versus tactical advantage, the order in which he prioritizes various threats. All of it is meticulously cataloged. Demiurge considers how to exploit these patterns later, not through direct confrontation, but through psychological and tactical pressure. Every adjustment Rimuru makes feeds the analytical web that Nazarick is weaving. Ainz observes this silent war with a measured gaze. The plan was not to initiate open battle, but to study the mind of this adaptive, unpredictable force. He notes with interest that Rimuru is cautious yet decisive, analytical yet compassionate. Traits that are advantageous for a leader but predictable under sufficient scrutiny. The interplay of restraint and decisiveness creates patterns that Demiurge can model and anticipate. The Guardians continue their roles flawlessly. Shalltear ensures any reconnaissance units encountering the destabilized regions are neutralized with precision, recording responses without leaving permanent casualties. Aura and Mare manipulate terrain to guide movements subtly, funneling Rimuru's forces toward areas that maximize observable reactions. Pandora's actor infiltrates political channels, influencing decisions in ways so discreet that Rimuru's intelligence teams detect anomalies but cannot pinpoint the source. Despite the careful orchestration, Rimuru does not remain passive. He adjusts to each event with remarkable speed, demonstrating why he is feared as both a demon lord and a strategist. He anticipates cascading effects, reinforces supply lines, and deploys counter-surveillance. Each action reveals an additional layer of his analytical process. Demiurge notes the efficiency of adaptation, the hierarchy of priorities, and the subtle emotional weighting applied to Rimuru's decisions. Every observation builds a more comprehensive model. As the week progresses, the forest becomes a living laboratory. Minor disturbances continue, each one designed to pull a reaction, each reaction feeding information back into Nazarick's calculations. Ainz does not interfere directly. He allows Demiurge's plan to unfold, confident that control is maintained. The results exceed expectations. Rimuru adjusts intelligently, but is forced to stretch resources across multiple fronts. The data accumulated is unparalleled, revealing decision-making speed, strategic depth, and risk tolerance. Rimuru's realization begins to crystallize. This is no ordinary adversary. This intelligence is precise, patient, and unrelenting. The incidents are not random. They are probes, carefully calibrated to test limits and extract information. He senses the invisible hand shaping events, understands its purpose, and yet the full scope remains elusive. Every defensive measure, every adjustment, every redeployment is monitored and recorded. By the end of the second week, Rimuru takes decisive action. He consolidates resources, reinforces critical nodes, and prepares a subtle counteroffensive aimed not at open confrontation, but at detection and identification. He begins tracing the anomalies back through their layers of manipulation, attempting to identify the controlling entity without revealing his own full capacity. Demiurge anticipates this maneuver immediately. He adjusts the placement of decoys, manipulates the apparent outcomes of skirmishes, and ensures that Rimuru's observations continue to feed into a controlled experiment. Nothing escapes observation. Nothing goes uncalculated. Each small engagement provides feedback, revealing both capability and methodology without escalating to irreversible conflict. Ainz observes, silent and composed. Demiurge's first move has succeeded beyond expectations. The forest is now a chessboard of intelligence and influence. Rimuru's adaptive strategy is being tested, refined, and catalogued. The next phase of engagement will not require force. It will require insight, and Nazarick has ensured that it now holds the upper hand in this war of minds. The night settles over the Jura Forest, but it is far from quiet. Invisible currents of strategy, calculation, and anticipation flow between the two supreme rulers. Demiurge's manipulations have forced Rimuru to reveal patterns, test limits, and respond in ways that strengthen Nazarick's position. Intelligence and absolute analysis are now in motion, and the first true move has reshaped the battlefield. Every decision Rimuru makes, every adaptation he deploys, is now part of a carefully measured experiment. And both sides understand that the next interaction will determine the trajectory of this fragile, tense balance. The Jura Forest has entered a tense equilibrium. The subtle manipulations orchestrated by Demiurge have forced Rimuru to redistribute forces, and every adjustment he makes is being recorded, analyzed, and countered indirectly. Yet while strategy dominates the surface, the true test of power is about to emerge, and it will be felt in a way no analysis alone can measure. Inside Nazarick, Ainz Ooal Gown finally calls upon the Guardians for a controlled demonstration of strength. This is not meant to be an all-out battle. It is meant to probe the upper limits of Rimuru's subordinates, to observe how Tempest's demon lords handle pressure without escalating into direct confrontation. Albedo steps forward, radiant in her armored splendor, while Shalltear's crimson eyes gleam with predatory focus. Cocytus flexes massive gauntlets. His towering form an unmistakable warning, and Ora Bellafiora with Mare stand ready, their expressions poised between vigilance and anticipation. Pandora's actor adjusts countless identities in the shadows, prepared to intervene with lethal precision should the need arise. Demiurge stands slightly apart, cane in hand, calculating every possible variable. His mind is running simulations at a speed faster than any human, even any ordinary demon lord could comprehend. He has chosen targets carefully, subordinate demon lords under Rimuru's command, beings of considerable power, yet not leaders capable of reshaping the battlefield independently. This is a probe, a controlled engagement designed to extract information while preserving the larger equilibrium. Rimuru observes quietly from Tempest, his golden eyes analyzing the forest and its shifting currents of energy. He sends his strongest commanders, Benimaru, Xion, Sue, and Diablo, forward with precise instructions. The objective is not to destroy, but to evaluate. The engagement is carefully calibrated to measure response speed, adaptability, and coordination between opposing forces. Each movement will be analyzed, each spell calculated for reaction potential, and every guardian action cataloged for patterns. The first clash occurs near the northern perimeter of the Jura Forest, where a contingent of Rimuru's demon lords encounters Aura and Mare. The terrain shifts subtly under the Guardian's control, forcing the demon lords to adapt instantly. Benimaru commands a defensive formation predicting the Guardian's movement, yet the floor beneath shifts unpredictably, reshaping the battlefield with spatial precision that would challenge even the most advanced demon lord. Rimuru watches, noting the timing, the coordination, and the decision-making process of both sides. Shalltear engages Xion directly, testing both her reflexes and her analytical process. The attack is precise but restrained, intended to probe for weaknesses rather than eliminate the target. Xion counters with defensive spells, her movements fluid, but the Guardian anticipates nearly every maneuver. Raphael records the data, showing that Shalltear's calculations account for multiple layers of prediction, confirming Demiurge's design. The fight is not about destruction. It is a complex dance of observation, adaptation, and controlled escalation. Cocytus meets Benimaru head-on, his strikes heavy and deliberate, designed to measure defensive response rather than to kill. Benimaru reacts with an instinctual balance between offense and defense, redirecting attacks while maintaining formation integrity. Each parry and thrust reveals the Demon Lord's decision-making hierarchy. Raphael overlays these reactions with simulations, creating a dynamic map of strategy, prioritization, and adaptability. Meanwhile, Pandora's actor manipulates minor illusions in the surrounding forest, creating phantom threats that compel Rimuru's forces to make split-second decisions. Every adjustment, every redeployment, every tactical calculation is observed by Demiurge, feeding into an ever-expanding predictive model. The Guardians remain entirely composed, never overextending, never revealing the limits of their strength. This is not a battle. This is an experiment in applied intelligence, and the variables are being recorded in real time. Even the environment becomes a participant. Trees shift subtly to restrict movement, shadows deepen to obscure vision, and magical energy currents are redirected to provide both defensive advantages and observational opportunities for Nazarick. Rimuru senses the unnatural modifications, but cannot determine their origin with certainty. Each adaptation he attempts is subtly countered, forcing further analytical evaluation. By the midpoint of the engagement, Rimuru's subordinates have already demonstrated extraordinary coordination. But Demiurge anticipates even their best responses. Shalltear's attacks are met with calculated counters, Cocytus's overwhelming strikes are redirected strategically, and the illusions orchestrated by Pandora's actor expose the tendencies and preferences of Rimuru's tactical deployment. The Guardian's dominance is not raw power but precision. They do not seek victory, they seek understanding. Rimuru begins adjusting in real time, his internal calculations accelerating. He predicts which Guardian will probe which avenue, estimates the timing of each illusion, and coordinates countermeasures with near-perfect timing. The duel is silent to the casual observer, yet every second is a test of adaptation, intelligence, and composure under pressure. Ainz watches from his throne, skeletal fingers steepled beneath his chin, observing both the engagement and the layers of strategy unfolding before him. Demiurge's plan has worked flawlessly. Rimuru is active, engaged, and reacting without realizing that every single movement is being catalogued. Every decision made by Tempest's demon lords feeds into a model that will allow Nazarick to anticipate responses, project weaknesses, and understand the hierarchy and cognitive patterns of Rimuru's forces. As night falls over the Jura Forest, the engagement reaches a temporary standstill. No one has been seriously harmed, yet every participant is aware of the stakes. The Guardians return to Nazarick, still composed, still precise, their observations adding depth to the data collected. Rimuru withdraws his forces to Tempest, analyzing every subtle hint, every tactical nuance, and every pattern observed. The balance remains tense. The first exchange of strength, intelligence, and observation has concluded, but both sides know that the true battle, one of full Demon Lord engagement, is only just beginning. The forest, scarred only by strategic movement and magical distortions, remains silent in the aftermath. Yet beneath its canopy, both Ainz and Rimuru now recognize a new layer of complexity. Intelligence, coordination, and precision have been tested. The Guardians have acted not as mere instruments of destruction, but as extensions of strategy and calculation. And Rimuru knows, as does Raphael, that the next encounter will not be subtle. It will escalate beyond minor probes, beyond controlled skirmishes, into a confrontation where the true limits of Demon Lord power are revealed, where every decision could tip the balance of this fragile, tense equilibrium. The temporary standstill does not signal calm, but preparation. Rimuru paces within Tempest, replaying every observed Guardian movement in his mind. Each step, each pause, each reaction reveals subtle patterns, timing, spacing, and priority hierarchies. He notices how Shalltear favored direct observation over unnecessary aggression, how Cocytus prioritized containment over overwhelming force, and how Pandora's actor manipulated perception with surgical precision. Every detail is a clue to the thinking behind Nazarick's Guardians. Rimuru begins coordinating with his Demon Lords to adapt. Benimaru suggests a layered offensive-defense approach, using decoys to test whether the Guardians' responses remain consistent or vary depending on perceived threat. Xian refines combat algorithms for predicting response windows, factoring in magical energy shifts, environmental manipulation, and psychological pressure. Sue reports that minor skirmishes previously observed revealed coordination beyond what standard analysis could predict. Rimuru nods thoughtfully. He understands that adapting in real time is critical, yet he must avoid overextending, lest the Guardians exploit even a single miscalculation. Meanwhile, in Nazarick, Demiurge reviews every piece of incoming data with clinical precision. Every Guardian action, every Tempest deployment, every magical spike is fed into a layered model of predictive outcomes. He isolates variables, Rimuru's prioritization of civilian protection, the reaction times of subordinates, patterns of energy expenditure, and simulates thousands of permutations. His conclusion is clear. Rimuru is formidable, but predictable under controlled observation. This is exactly the insight Ainz desired. The next engagement is planned not with brute force, but with subtle escalation. Demiurge directs Shalltear and Cocytus to probe secondary supply routes, Aura and Mare to manipulate terrain subtly, and Pandora's actor to infiltrate distant command posts under assumed identities. The goal is to stretch Rimuru's awareness, to force him to make decisions that reveal internal logic, risk tolerance, and hierarchy of priorities. Nothing must escalate to open war. The purpose is intelligence extraction and adaptive observation. Rimuru, aware that something unseen is influencing peripheral events, begins deploying countermeasures with precision. Raphael adjusts the monitoring grid to detect subtle energy fluctuations, analyzes deviations from expected patterns, and flags anomalies for Rimuru. He notes that each Guardian probe, though restrained, follows a pattern optimized for maximal data collection with minimal risk. It is not aggression, it is pure strategy, intelligence testing disguised as minor disruption. The Guardian probes commence in staggered sequences. Shalltear appears first, testing both reconnaissance and response coordination among Rimuru's Demon Lords. Cocytus engages with controlled overwhelming presence, forcing evaluation of defensive formation and prioritization. Aura and Mare manipulate terrain subtly, creating invisible obstacles and forcing unexpected tactical recalibration. Pandora's actor creates multiple illusions simultaneously, compelling Rimuru's forces to choose between multiple perceived threats. Each action is cataloged and analyzed in real time by Demiurge, who observes how Rimuru balances offense, defense, and resource allocation. Even minor deviations are noted. Ainz watches silently, skeletal frame unmoving as the patterns emerge. Rimuru adjusts swiftly, adapts to unforeseen manipulation, and responds without overcommitment. He demonstrates remarkable cognitive flexibility, yet each response is a window into decision-making tendencies. Tempest's demon lords begin to notice the intricacy of the engagement. Benimaru comments on how the Guardians' attacks feel choreographed, as if anticipating every move, yet never fully exposing their own limitations. Xian remarks on the precision of Shalltear's observation. Every strike and feint is calculated to reveal response times and patterns. Diablo confirms that the illusions are not just distractions but probes into hierarchy, revealing command structure and priority. Rimuru notes each observation meticulously, understanding that every engagement is both a challenge and a lesson in the mechanics of Nazarick's power. By midnight, both sides recognize the effectiveness of this controlled escalation. No permanent harm has been done, yet both have gained unprecedented insight. Demiurge has learned the depth of Rimuru's adaptive capacity, while Rimuru has begun mapping the Guardians' patterns, their strengths, and their decision-making algorithms. The forest remains a neutral battlefield, scarred only by subtle manipulation and strategic placement of magical currents. Even as Tempest consolidates, Rimuru prepares for the next sequence. He knows that full confrontation is inevitable, yet both sides must first understand the cognitive framework of the other. The engagement between the Guardians and Rimuru's demon lords has not been about raw strength. It has been a battle of perception, prediction, and strategic analysis. And while no decisive blow has been struck, both sides now grasp a fundamental truth. Intelligence, coordination, and adaptability are as lethal as any spell or sword. And in the world of demon lords, knowing your opponent may be the deadliest weapon of all. As the engagement continues into the second night, Rimuru begins to notice subtler layers of manipulation. The disturbances are no longer just localized probes or illusions. They are interconnected, forming an invisible web of influence that spans multiple fronts. Small villages report strange phenomena simultaneously. Peripheral demon lords act with unexplained hesitation, and even natural mana flows in the forest are subtly redirected. It becomes clear that this is not merely a test of combat proficiency. It is a full-scale evaluation of strategic reasoning, adaptability, and leadership under pressure. Rimuru convenes a deeper council with his demon lords, including Benimaru, Xian, Diablo, and the enigmatic Raphael. He explains the need to anticipate not only physical attacks, but cognitive manipulations as well. Decisions now cannot be reactive. They must account for layered strategies designed to predict and influence their choices. Each subordinate is assigned specialized tasks. Benimaru oversees frontline adaptability and rapid redeployment. Xian focuses on defensive countermeasures and containment. Diablo is responsible for long-range observation and magical analysis, and Raphael orchestrates data integration, creating a constantly evolving model of Nazarick's engagement strategy. Inside Nazarick, Demiurge observes these adjustments with a measured smile. Each decision Rimuru makes confirms the hypotheses previously formulated. The demon lord's predictive models, his prioritization of protection and efficiency, his willingness to withhold direct aggression until understanding the scope of manipulation, all of these behaviors are feeding data into Nazarick's internal predictive systems. Demiurge does not need to force mistakes. Rimuru creates them naturally by revealing his methodology through his own calculated actions. Shalltear and Cocytus begin coordinated probing missions, now more complex than before. Shalltear targets Rimuru's reconnaissance units, using feints and controlled pressure to evaluate response hierarchy, while Cocytus introduces spatial constraints that test both the Demon Lord's positioning strategies and their capacity to adapt under restricted movement. Aura and Mare manipulate environmental factors, subtly altering terrain and magical density to see how Tempest's forces compensate. Pandora's actor continues to operate in the background, creating phantom contingencies that compel Rimuru to allocate attention across multiple fronts. The results are illuminating. Rimuru adjusts seamlessly, yet the patterns of adaptation reveal tendencies. Benimaru prefers decisive deployment over prolonged observation. Xion reacts more conservatively when allies are threatened, and Diablo prioritizes information acquisition above immediate offensive action. These behaviors, though effective, are now cataloged and understood by Nazarick. Demiurge anticipates future deployments, calculates countermeasures, and prepares subsequent probes designed to further refine the model of Tempest's strategic behavior. Rimuru, for his part, begins to sense the invisible threads guiding the forest's disturbances. Though he cannot yet identify the source, he perceives the orchestration behind every anomaly. He initiates a subtle counter-strategy, deliberate misdirection. Some demon lords are reassigned to feigned weak points, false energy signatures are projected, and minor skirmishes are staged to draw attention away from critical assets. Rimuru intends to force his observers to reveal themselves, even if only partially, by manipulating the data they are gathering. The forest itself becomes a participant in this intellectual duel. Magical flows are redirected, shadows extend unnaturally to conceal or reveal movement selectively, and the terrain subtly shifts under both Tempest and Nazarick's influence. Every step is calculated, every maneuver deliberate, yet every move also contains layers of deception. Both sides are probing, testing, and responding simultaneously. The boundary between observation and engagement blurs. Inside Nazarick, Ainz watches with skeletal patience. Demiurge reports each minor adjustment, each feint, each subtle countermeasure with precision. He notes Rimuru's ability to integrate multiple streams of information, his speed of recalibration, and his instinctive prioritization. Ainz considers the implications. Rimuru's intelligence is remarkable, adaptive in ways that challenge even the Guardian's predictive capabilities. Yet the controlled environment Nazarick has created ensures that each move is still measurable, each decision still analyzable. The Guardians themselves begin showing subtle shifts in approach. Shalltear's probing becomes layered, mixing offensive feints with defensive observation. Cocytus combines containment and distraction, Aura and Mare introduce unpredictable terrain modifications, and Pandora's actor escalates the illusionary contingencies. Every adjustment is designed not to kill or even overwhelm, but to refine understanding of Rimuru's tactical depth and cognitive limits. Back in Tempest, Rimuru begins noticing anomalies in the forest's mana flows, shifts too precise to be natural. He realizes that the Guardians are now influencing multiple fronts simultaneously, creating an intricate network of indirect observation. Recognizing the need to challenge the intelligence behind these maneuvers, he begins to implement countermeasures that introduce controlled variables, false signals, decoy movements, and deliberately staged vulnerabilities. The engagement reaches a new level of complexity. Every minor encounter, every environmental shift, every feint now carries layers of observation, reaction, and prediction. Rimuru adapts, but so too does Nazarick. Intelligence versus absolute analysis has moved beyond theory. It is now active, dynamic, and ongoing. Each side is learning, evolving, and adjusting in real time. And the forest itself has become a living map of strategic interaction, where every step, every spell, and every decision is data, feeding an ever-expanding calculation of potential outcomes. By the third night, the intensity of the engagement reaches a level that transcends conventional combat. The forest has become a theater of layered strategy, with every skirmish, every feint, and every tactical redeployment serving dual purposes, as both a test of strength and a probe into the opponent's strategic framework. Rimuru Tempest, while maintaining his calm and analytical exterior, begins to notice the patterns of intelligence woven into the Guardian maneuvers. Each Guardian is not simply reacting, they are anticipating, guiding, and subtly shaping Tempest's actions without ever crossing into direct aggression. Benimaru observes this immediately, noting the Guardian's uncanny ability to synchronize attacks with shifts in terrain and energy density, adjusting almost instantaneously to the Demon Lord's countermeasures. Xion recognizes that Shalltear's strikes are more than combat. They are a form of interrogation, measuring reflexes, coordination, and decision-making under controlled duress. Diablo detects Pandora's actors' illusions, manipulating perception and forcing split-second judgment calls, revealing not only the responses of individual demon lords, but also their cohesion as a unit under pressure. Rimuru recognizes the need to escalate the depth of his counter-analysis. He deploys minor feints, false vulnerabilities, and deliberately staged anomalies, compelling the Guardians to respond to simulated threats. Each reaction is measured and recorded, feeding into Tempest's own predictive modeling. Raphael overlays multiple simulations, anticipating how the Guardians will adapt to deceptive stimuli, while Rimuru carefully calibrates the balance between genuine risk and controlled manipulation. Within Nazarick, Demiurge observes these adjustments with deliberate satisfaction. Every action Rimuru takes, every countermeasure deployed, and every feigned vulnerability is data. A new layer of understanding that feeds into Nazarick's predictive systems. He notes the Demon Lord's capacity for integrating multiple streams of information in real time, the prioritization hierarchy, and the subtle trade-offs made between offensive opportunity, defensive security, and environmental awareness. This is intelligence refined under pressure, and it excites Demiurge to no end. Ainz Ooal Gown, seated upon his throne, observes silently, skeletal fingers steepled beneath his chin. He appreciates the elegance of the engagement, a controlled contest where physical damage is minimized, yet strategic comprehension is maximized. He notes Rimuru's capacity for restraint, adaptability, and layered thinking, qualities that make Tempest a formidable opponent not in raw power alone, but in cognitive dominance. Ainz understands that the Guardian's demonstration was not meant to test physical might, but to probe the architecture of Rimuru's mind. As the engagement continues, the Guardians escalate the complexity of their maneuvers. Shalltear combines feints, defensive retreats, and observation. Cocytus integrates containment zones with subtle energy redirection, and Aura with Mare manipulates terrain and line of sight to force decisions under pressure. Pandora's actor creates multi-layered illusionary threats, compelling Rimuru's forces to allocate attention and resources in ways that reveal operational priorities and internal coordination. Rimuru responds with remarkable composure, adjusting formations, deploying predictive countermeasures, and integrating deceptive signals. Every move is calculated to elicit measurable responses from the Guardians while maintaining the safety and cohesion of his forces. The balance between deception, observation, and counter-strategy becomes a silent duel of cognition and foresight, where every step carries multiple potential interpretations and every reaction is a source of data for both sides. By dawn, both sides have extracted invaluable insights. Rimuru has mapped the Guardians' tendencies, their prioritization, and the interplay between observation and action, while Demiurge has cataloged the Demon Lord's decision-making processes, adaptability, and responses to layered manipulations. The forest is scarred not by destructive magic, but by a sophisticated exchange of intelligence, testing limits and revealing patterns that will shape the next phase of engagement. Even in the absence of outright conflict, the implications are profound. Intelligence, adaptability, and precise execution have proven as critical as raw power. Both Tempest and Nazarick have measured each other's capabilities, and both understand that the next encounter will escalate beyond minor probes and controlled skirmishes. When the full confrontation occurs, it will not be decided merely by strength or magic, but by whose strategy, foresight, and adaptability can dominate the battlefield under conditions where every action is anticipated, analyzed, and countered. The forest rests in an uneasy quiet. Shadows stretch unnaturally under the rising sun, and mana flows in subtly altered patterns as though recording every heartbeat of the engagement. Rimuru consolidates his forces, recalibrates defenses, and reviews every piece of data, aware that this silent war of cognition has only begun. Inside Nazarick, Demiurge reviews his recordings with meticulous precision, noting every response, every adaptation, every nuance that will feed into the larger strategy. Ainz watches without motion, knowing that the first real chess pieces have been placed. The Guardian's engagement has revealed patterns, weaknesses, and decision-making tendencies, yet it has also illuminated Tempest's capacity for adaptation and subtle deception. The next stage, when it comes, will not involve minor skirmishes. It will involve full-scale strategic maneuvering, where every demon lord, every guardian, and every manipulated variable becomes part of a living, evolving battlefield of intelligence, foresight, and power. The Guardians retreat to Nazarick for now, leaving the forest in temporary stillness, yet both sides feel the tension, the awareness, and the anticipation of escalation. The battle has become a war of minds, where observation and adaptation are weapons just as lethal as any spell or sword. Rimuru Tempest has demonstrated resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. Yet Nazarick has gained a wealth of insight, preparing for the inevitable moment when subtle testing evolves into outright confrontation. The stage is set, the players are in position, and the true test, where Guardians meet Demon Lords head-on with every layer of strategy in play, is only just beginning. Before the first light of dawn touches the Jura Forest, an unusual stillness blankets the land. Every creature senses it, every tree seems to hold its breath, and even the flow of mana feels heavier, charged with expectation. Rimuru Tempest surveys the perimeter from a high vantage point, his golden eyes reflecting the faint glimmer of magical traces left by the Guardian's prior movements. This is no longer a game of observation or subtle probing. This is the threshold of confrontation, the collision of intelligence, strategy, and overwhelming power that has been simmering beneath the surface since the first engagement. Inside Nazarick, Ainz Ooal Gown sits upon his throne, a skeletal gaze fixed upon the forest that has become a proving ground. The Guardians stand behind him, each poised like a perfect instrument of war, radiating controlled yet absolute power. Demiurge stands slightly apart, cane in hand, a calculating smile playing across his face as he reviews the final variables. Every Guardian knows their role down to the finest detail. Every magical system within Nazarick prepared for instant deployment, and every contingency accounted for. The time for subtlety has passed. Rimuru signals his commanders, and Tempest's demon lords spread across the forest with calculated precision. Benimaru takes point, his aura blazing as he scans for energy signatures. Xion positions herself defensively, ready to counter overwhelming force. Diablo ascends above the canopy, gathering intelligence, while Raphael synchronizes magical sensors to detect even the faintest anomalies. The battlefield is no longer defined by physical terrain, but by layers of mana, strategic positioning, and cognitive warfare. The first clash is instantaneous. Shalltear descends upon the northern flank, a whirlwind of red and black armor, her lance slicing through illusions and defensive wards alike. Benimaru intercepts, deflecting with his katana while commanding nearby units to adjust formation. The air vibrates with the impact of their power, the sound reverberating through the forest like a drumbeat of war. Rimuru observes, calculating trajectories, energy expenditure, and timing. Every strike, every dodge, every maneuver is an insight into the Guardians' combat pattern. Yet the Guardians themselves remain enigmatic, their true limits hidden behind flawless execution. Cocytus advances from the eastern sector, each step cracking the earth as he approaches Diablo. The sheer force of his presence warps the surrounding air, a mixture of gravitational pressure and magical intensity. Diablo counters with a barrage of long-range magical projectiles, each precise and calculated, yet Cocytus adapts fluidly, redirecting energy, altering momentum, and probing for openings. Rimuru notes the Guardian's ability to operate both individually and as a unit, their coordination flawless without overt communication, a level of synchronicity that mirrors Tempest's own command style. In the southern perimeter, Aura, Bellafiora, and Mare manipulate terrain with supernatural speed, creating illusions of impassable barriers, while secretly opening concealed pathways to flank Rimuru's forces. Xion detects anomalies, adjusting defensive wards and countering the misdirection. Yet the Guardian's subtle influence continues to shape movement and decision-making. Pandora's actor strikes simultaneously from multiple vectors, creating duplicates and false threats, forcing Rimuru's demon lords to allocate attention and resources with precision to avoid overextension. Ainz finally rises from his throne. His skeletal form moves with unexpected fluidity, hands gesturing as waves of pure magical energy ripple outward, altering mana currents across the battlefield. Rimuru immediately senses the shift, recognizing the magnitude of Ainz's presence. This is no longer a test of subordinates. It is a direct engagement between supreme powers, a battle where every action carries the weight of devastation and every decision could alter the course of the fight. The collision escalates as Rimuru himself enters the fray, his slime form shifting fluidly, adapting instantly to attacks while projecting countermeasures. His body morphs, creating layered defenses and offensive extensions, each movement a blend of agility, intelligence, and raw magical potential. Shalltear's lance clashes against Rimuru's adaptive barriers, Cocytus's strikes meet flexible countershapes, and the terrain itself becomes a dynamic participant, warping and responding to the layered forces in play. Every Guardian coordinates seamlessly, exploiting openings, probing responses, and maintaining constant pressure without exposing vulnerability. Rimuru counters with equal precision, anticipating attacks, manipulating energy flows, and forcing the Guardians to adapt to his evolving strategies. The battlefield is no longer a simple contest of strength. It is a living matrix of prediction, adaptation, and counter-adaptation. Each strike, each spell, each movement serves multiple purposes: testing, probing, defending, and learning. As the engagement continues, Rimuru begins to identify patterns within the Guardian's precision. Shalltear favors indirect manipulation over brute force. Cocytus exploits momentum and spacing. Aura and Mare create dynamic tactical layers, and Pandora's actor manages deception and misdirection with surgical timing. Even Ainz's presence exerts an unseen gravitational influence, reshaping mana currents and subtly altering the battlefield to test reaction thresholds. Rimuru responds by introducing deliberate unpredictability, deploying countermeasures designed not to harm but to confuse, probe, and gather intelligence on the Guardian's adaptive limits. This is the moment where intelligence, strategy, and raw power converge. The Battle of Overlords has begun in earnest, and the Jura Forest has become a theater for forces beyond imagination. Both sides understand that this is more than a physical contest. It is a duel of cognition, perception, and ultimate foresight. Every spell cast, every movement executed, and every strategic decision will be recorded, analyzed, and used in real time. This is no ordinary battle. This is the collision of supreme intelligence and overwhelming power, a war where the line between observation and engagement blurs, and where only adaptability and insight will determine the victor. The battle intensifies as Rimuru begins to shift from reactive defense to controlled offensive maneuvers. His form ripples fluidly, extending tendrils of slime imbued with high-density magical energy, striking with precision while simultaneously acting as a sensory network to map the Guardian's movements. Each Guardian adapts instantly, countering attacks while maintaining cohesion with their counterparts. Shalltear's lance strikes with surgical accuracy. Cocytus reshapes his massive frame to anticipate counter-momentum, and Aura and Mare manipulated terrain to funnel Tempest's forces into calculated zones of observation. Pandora's actor continues to layer illusions, forcing Rimuru to allocate attention across multiple fronts, each decision revealing a fragment of his strategic thought process. Rimuru senses the subtle manipulation of the battlefield, recognizing patterns in mana density, energy flow, and guardian positioning. He begins to exploit minor gaps in timing, introducing feints that test the limits of their anticipation. A brief opening appears near Cocytus, and Rimuru sends a concentrated pulse of energy that forces Cocytus to adjust his approach mid-strike, revealing a minor but critical delay in reaction time. Each observation is instantaneously analyzed, feeding into Rimuru's predictive model while simultaneously creating a feedback loop of adaptation for the Guardians, who adjust their strategies in real time to maintain dominance. The clash between Shalltear and Rimuru becomes a dazzling display of agility and precision. Every thrust, parry, and feint is executed with near-perfect timing. Yet each action carries a secondary purpose, probing for responses, measuring energy expenditure, and gauging decision-making thresholds. Rimuru's adaptive barriers flex and extend in response to Shalltear's lances, shifting not only to neutralize physical strikes, but also to redirect magical energy in ways that subtly counter other Guardian maneuvers. He begins integrating predictive modeling with instinctual response, creating an almost imperceptible rhythm that challenges even Shalltear's acute combat awareness. Meanwhile, Cocytus presses the eastern front, transforming the earth and air into a series of traps and obstacles designed to restrict Rimuru's freedom of movement. Diablo responds with calculated projectile barrages, energy displacement spells, and rapid spatial recalibration, forcing Cocytus to continually adjust his attacks. The forest itself becomes a dynamic battlefield, terrain reshaped, barriers erected, and energy currents manipulated in real time. Rimuru observes how the Guardians maintain operational cohesion despite being physically separated, revealing patterns of indirect coordination, predictive movement, and distributed awareness. On the southern front, Aura and Mare's terrain manipulation creates false choke points, sudden rises, and concealed depressions that force Rimuru's forces to constantly adapt. Xion coordinates the countermeasures, using layered defensive wards and environmental manipulation to detect and neutralize these traps while minimizing risk to allied forces. The Guardian's ability to operate as a unified entity without explicit communication becomes increasingly apparent, their precision and coordination almost preternatural, a living extension of Demiurge's strategic design. Pandora's actor introduces multiple layers of deceptive threats, simulating attacks from unexpected angles, creating phantom troop movements and altering energy signatures to mislead observers. Rimuru responds by deploying decoy units, generating false energy signals and varying his combat rhythm, forcing Pandora's actor to expend energy maintaining illusions while continuously testing the Demon Lord's adaptability. Each interaction generates immediate feedback. Rimuru's forces adapt, the Guardians recalibrate, and both sides gain insight into the other's decision-making. Prioritization and strategic depth. Ainz's presence looms over the battlefield as an immutable force. His skeletal hands trace complex gestures, warping mana flows, and subtly enhancing the Guardian's movements. Rimuru senses the shift immediately, recognizing the weight of direct engagement from Ainz himself. Every spell, every environmental distortion, every magical manipulation is a test of his capacity to adapt under pressure, forcing Rimuru to anticipate not only physical strikes, but the underlying intelligence orchestrating them. The forest trembles under the combined weight of these overlords. Trees splinter, magical barriers pulse, and energy currents ripple across vast expanses, yet no casualty is permanent, no strike wasted. Every action is a controlled engagement, a layer of observation designed to extract data while testing limits. Rimuru counters with adaptive energy shields, morphing offensive strikes, and real-time strategic reallocation of his demon lords. The battlefield has become an intricate dance of perception, cognition, and predictive analysis, where both sides simultaneously test, respond, and evolve. By the midpoint of this confrontation, Rimuru has identified subtle tendencies. Shalltear favors subtle feints over direct confrontation when probing unknown capabilities. Cocytus relies on momentum and spatial dominance to restrict opponent movement. Aura and Mare exploit environmental manipulation with near imperceptible timing, and Pandora's actor thrives on dividing attention through layered deception. Every observation feeds Rimuru's adaptive strategies, yet simultaneously, the Guardians adjust to each new layer of counter-strategy, maintaining a constant equilibrium of power and intelligence. The first true crescendo of the battle approaches. Rimuru prepares to integrate multi-layered deception with full-force adaptation, coordinating all demon lords into simultaneous counterprobes, not to break the Guardians' defenses, but to force them into subtle overextension. The Guardians in turn adjust, creating a cycle of predictive countermeasures, each anticipating the other's adaptive limits. The Jura Forest is alive with magical energy, cognitive feedback loops, and strategic calculation. This is not a battle of destruction. It is a war of supreme intellect, reflexes, and adaptation, where the outcome will be determined by whose foresight, precision, and ingenuity can dominate under the most extreme and fluid conditions. Rimuru's countermeasures intensify as the Guardians escalate their coordinated assaults. Every feint, strike, and magical projection now carries layered intent. Shalltear shifts between aggressive lances and probing strikes, subtly measuring the speed, range, and decision-making hierarchy of Rimuru's defenses. Cocytus reshapes the battlefield continuously, forcing adjustments in formation, testing the demon lord's flexibility under sustained spatial pressure. Aura and Mare manipulate terrain in real time, creating false avenues of attack and retreat while concealing the Guardians' true positions. Pandora's actor multiplies the complexity, generating multiple simultaneous illusions, each compelling a response that exposes instinctive prioritization and allocation of attention within Tempest's forces. Rimuru responds with unparalleled adaptability. His form continuously morphs, balancing offense and defense while integrating predictive modeling derived from the Guardian's prior behaviors. Decoys are deployed strategically, not to distract but to test the Guardian's thresholds for differentiation between genuine threats and false signals. Simultaneously, layered magical barriers shift dynamically, altering energy flow, density, and reflection patterns to probe Shalltear's response times, Cocytus's predictive movement, and the coordination between Aura, Mare, and Pandora's actor. Rimuru's tactical orchestration now rivals the precision of Nazarick's Guardians, each decision simultaneously defensive, offensive, and analytical. The forest itself becomes an instrument of war. Trees contort, ground rises and falls in sudden shifts, and mana flows in subtle currents designed to influence perception and decision-making. The interplay of environment and combat creates a battlefield that is not static but reactive, an extension of both Rimuru's and the Guardian's strategy. Every strike, every maneuver, and every spell now interacts with multiple layers of magical and environmental variables. Rimuru observes patterns in the Guardian's coordination, noting how Shalltear's aggression is balanced by precise timing. Cocytus's overwhelming presence is moderated by environmental constraints, and Aura and Mare manipulate terrain fluidly to force calculated errors in allocation of forces. Ainz's intervention adds an entirely new dimension. His skeletal form hovers above the battlefield, fingers tracing complex symbols in the air that warp the flow of mana on a massive scale. Spells ripple outward, subtly shifting gravitational fields, redirecting energy currents, and creating micro-variations in terrain that test Rimuru's response threshold. Rimuru adapts in real time, integrating environmental data with predictive modeling, altering attack vectors and shifting formations instantaneously. The battle has transcended conventional combat, evolving into a multi-layered contest of foresight, adaptation, and perception. As the conflict escalates, Rimuru begins orchestrating simultaneous multi-front maneuvers, using Benimaru to anchor the northern line, Xion and Diablo to manipulate defensive and offensive pivots in the center, and Raphael to continuously process battlefield intelligence. Decoys are layered with false energy signatures, simulated vulnerabilities, and minor staged skirmishes to force subtle overextensions by the Guardians. Each Guardian adapts fluidly, creating a cycle of observation, prediction, counter-adaptation, and recalibration that escalates the intensity of the confrontation without resorting to all-out destruction. The first critical test emerges when Shalltear detects a minor breach in the defensive perimeter created deliberately by Rimuru. She adjusts instantaneously, her lance striking precisely where the breach is, only to find it is a decoy. Cocytus follows suit, attempting to exploit what appears to be a weakness, only to have Diablo redirect attacks with near-prescient accuracy. Aura and Mare manipulate terrain to guide perceived threats toward empty zones, while Pandora's actor creates phantom movements that further complicate the calculus. Rimuru observes how each Guardian reacts under the compounded pressure of layered deception, cataloging the limits of their predictive abilities. Rimuru then initiates a subtle escalation, a coordinated offensive that simultaneously tests each Guardian's reflexes, decision-making hierarchy, and adaptability. Spells ripple across the battlefield in precise arcs, synchronized with movement, terrain manipulation, and decoy positioning. Every Guardian adjusts fluidly, maintaining cohesion while revealing the thresholds at which reactive adaptation begins to falter. Rimuru notes the energy expenditure, timing discrepancies, and prioritization shifts, integrating this data into his continuously evolving model. Despite the escalating intensity, neither side overcommits. The Guardian's precision, Ainz's overarching influence, and Rimuru's adaptive mastery create a dynamic equilibrium. Each action triggers multiple layers of response and counter-response, a living feedback loop of cognition and strategy. Minor skirmishes explode into bursts of energy and light, shaping the battlefield and providing data points for both sides. The Jura Forest becomes a living simulation of strategic interplay, where every strike and every magical fluctuation contributes to a greater understanding of strengths, weaknesses, and adaptive thresholds. By the midpoint of the battle, Rimuru has begun to identify not only individual tendencies, but also systemic patterns in the Guardian's coordination. Shalltear favors layered feints over sustained aggression when probing adaptive limits. Cocytus relies on the interplay of spatial dominance and momentum to restrict opponent movement while compensating for environmental manipulation. Aura and Mare optimize terrain alteration to create multidimensional pressure without revealing vulnerabilities. Pandora's actor orchestrates perceptual manipulation with surgical timing, forcing allocation of attention and resources in ways that expose strategic hierarchy. The collision of these forces has transformed the Jura Forest into a battleground of intellect as much as strength. Rimuru's multi-layered counter-strategies, combined with his Demon Lord's coordination, continue to press the Guardians while extracting critical insight into their operational framework. Simultaneously, the Guardians adjust with fluid precision, probing, testing, and analyzing the limits of Tempest's adaptability. The battle has become a continuous loop of observation, counteraction, and strategic recalibration, where raw power alone cannot determine the outcome, and intelligence, foresight, and adaptation are the ultimate weapons. Rimuru senses the turning point approaching. The battle has shifted from direct confrontation into an intricate contest of predictive warfare. Every Guardian strike, every shift in terrain, every illusionary maneuver has revealed fragments of thought, patterns of prioritization, and behavioral thresholds. Rimuru integrates these insights with near-perfect timing, altering his strategies in real time, forcing the Guardians to respond to a constantly evolving threat, that cannot be anticipated with simple, linear analysis. Benimaru and Xion lead coordinated strikes that appear to test the Guardian's limits, while Diablo's high-speed magical assaults probe for reaction windows. Raphael continuously overlays predictions onto observed behavior, dynamically recalculating probabilities and feeding Rimuru instantaneous adaptive strategies. Shalltear's attacks intensify with greater precision, now probing multiple layers of deception simultaneously. Each lance strike, though not intended to harm critically, tests Rimuru's capacity for multi-layered defense and cognitive processing. Cocytus applies pressure through overwhelming presence and environmental manipulation, forcing the demon lords to balance offense and defense while maintaining formation integrity. Aura and Mare's terrain shifts become almost imperceptible, compelling subtle redeployment and instant adaptation, while Pandora's actor multiplies threats from multiple angles, forcing Rimuru to split attention without exposing weaknesses. Ainz observes the battlefield with unflinching patience. His skeletal gaze analyzes every energy fluctuation, every movement, every subtle interaction. He recognizes that Rimuru's adaptive capacity is extraordinary, yet the Guardian's precision and coordinated strategy continue to push Tempest's forces toward their limits. Every action by Rimuru is mirrored by a countermeasure, every adaptation countered by anticipation, creating a multi-layered feedback loop that tests both intellect and raw power. Rimuru realizes the Guardian's synergy is their greatest strength. Each Guardian compensates for the other's limitations, their movements flowing like a single organism, orchestrated not only by Demiurge, but amplified through Ainz's presence. To break this cohesion, Rimuru integrates decoys, multidirectional assaults, and simulated vulnerabilities to create perceptual conflicts. He forces decision-making under uncertainty, compelling the Guardians to prioritize and recalibrate with each microsecond of engagement. The battle has evolved into a pure contest of prediction, adaptation, and cognitive resilience. As the night deepens, Rimuru executes a bold maneuver. He channels a massive surge of mana through his body, creating layered constructs that simultaneously attack, defend, and obscure, forcing each Guardian to address multiple threats at once. Shalltear adjusts to block, Cocytus counters the spatial manipulation, Aura and Mare scramble to maintain terrain advantage, and Pandora's actor disperses into numerous copies to observe and respond. Rimuru's forces are synchronized perfectly, creating a web of adaptive strategy that challenges the Guardians' coordination like never before. The Guardians, however, respond flawlessly. Each movement, each counter, each defensive measure is executed with perfect timing and precision. Shalltear feints while blocking, Cocytus channels momentum to redirect attacks, Aura and Mare manipulate terrain dynamically to funnel threats, and Pandora's actor uses misdirection to continuously test the Demon Lord's adaptability. Even in the face of Rimuru's ingenuity, the Guardians maintain near-perfect cohesion, their collective awareness and coordination pushing Tempest's forces to the edge of response capability. Ainz intervenes subtly, reshaping mana currents to test Rimuru's perception and adjustment speed. Rimuru senses the presence but must contend with the simultaneous barrage of Guardian assaults. Each decision is a choice between risk and reward, every maneuver a test of cognition and instinct. The battlefield has become a living matrix of energy, prediction, and adaptive intelligence, where every action carries multiple consequences. The collision of supreme intellect and raw power escalates to levels beyond ordinary comprehension. As dawn begins to break, Rimuru consolidates his forces, simultaneously analyzing and exploiting patterns observed in the Guardians' coordinated attacks. The first true phase of the Overlord clash has revealed strengths, weaknesses, and the limits of adaptability on both sides. Every Guardian move, every Demon Lord adjustment, every strategic feint has contributed to a deep understanding that will inform the next sequence of engagement. The forest bears no permanent scars. Yet the invisible imprint of this battle, of intellect, foresight, and adaptability, marks the beginning of a conflict that transcends mere combat. The final moments of this engagement are silent but charged with anticipation. Rimuru tempers his offensive, allowing the Guardians to stabilize while he continues to process and adapt. Both sides have demonstrated that power is not defined solely by destructive capability, but by foresight, adaptability, and the ability to respond to unpredictable circumstances with precision. The Jura Forest becomes a testament to the collision of supreme intellect, strategy, and magical might, where victory is as much about understanding as it is about power. With the Guardians returning to Nazarick and Tempest's forces regrouping, the immediate engagement concludes. The first phase of the Battle of Overlords has ended, leaving both sides enriched with insight and data, preparing for inevitable escalation. The forest remains charged with residual mana, a quiet monument to the clash of supreme strategists. And with that, the Jura Forest falls into a tense calm. The battle may have paused, but the war of intelligence and power between Nazarick and Tempest has only just begun. The Overlords have tested each other, measured limits, and now the stage is set for what promises to be an even greater confrontation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what would happen if Nazarick entered the Tensura universe, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more multiverse matchups. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think would ultimately gain the upper hand in this clash of overlords? Stay tuned for our next video where the battle continues.